Thank you for joining us on today's live broadcast of Senate Plenary. I am Ignatius Nkwo. Well, yesterday being Tuesday, the Senate began second reading of the 2022 Appropriation Bill. And that is a very significant aspect of the scrutiny of the budget. And today, the bill will be coming for second reading. And then, today will be the second day of the debate of the general principles of the 2022 Appropriation Bill. Now, a person will be going to the chamber to follow with the debate. But then on the other paper of today, we have about 5 bills that will be coming up for first reading. And then we have 2 bills that will be coming up for concurrence. Well, we'll now take you straight to the chamber to follow the continuation of the debate on the general principles of the 2022 budget.
Please go ahead.
Page 4 of the report. After listening to the nominee short briefing, the committee observed thus as follows: that the nominee has satisfied the requirement of Section 4 of the National Assembly Service Commission Act 2014 as amended, that following his antecedents as a seasoned legislator in the Imo State House of Assembly, he is competent and suitable for appointment as a commissioner representing Southeast Zone in the National Assembly Service Commission. That there is no petition against his nomination as a commissioner in the National Assembly Service Commission before the committee that screened him. Mr. President, the Committee on Establishment and Public Service, having screened the nominee, hereby recommends that the Senate to confirm the nomination of Honourable Amechi Nwoha as a commissioner representing Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, on behalf of the committee, I most sincerely thank the Senate for the opportunity to serve in this regard. Mr. President, I so submit.
Any comments? Leader of the Senate, Committee of the Whole.
Mr. President, I rise to move a motion that this chamber resolve in the Committee of the Whole to consider this report. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion that the Senate resolve into a Committee of Whole in consideration of this report.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider the report, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Will the Senate approve the nomination of Honourable Amechi Nwoha for appointment as Commissioner representing Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I rise to move that the chair reports progress. I so move.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to second the motion.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse to plenary for the chair to report progress, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate, in the Committee of the Whole, considered the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service on the screening of Mr. President's nominee for appointment as Commissioner representing Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission, and approve the nomination of Honourable Amechi Nwaha as Commissioner representing Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Confirmation. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Honourable Amechi Nwaha for appointment as Commissioner representing Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Honourable Amechi Nwaha representing Southeast is hereby confirmed as Commissioner in the National Assembly Service Commission. Congratulations to him.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second to the third order of the day are House bills for concurrence as listed in the order paper. Mr. President, for the simple nature of the bills and the inter-chamber reciprocity, I will use a single lead debate on these bills. With your permission, Mr. President.
You may proceed.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, these bills are: 1, Climate Change Bill 2021, House Bill 357, and number 2 is Adeyemi Federal University of Education Ondo Establishment Bill 2021. These bills are brought because of the urgency, which their consideration demands at this point in time. The first one is that the members of the Senate will recall that Mr. President will be attending the forthcoming International Conference on Climate Change, which is scheduled to take place, I think, in Scotland in the next few months. And we thought it's very astute to support Mr. President's attendance by getting the bill passed and, if possible, assented before he departs for this international conference. Therefore, the Climate Change Bill 2021 was read the first time on Wednesday, 14th July 2021. This bill seeks to provide a framework for mainstreaming of climate actions, particularly to provide a system for carbon budgeting and establishment of National Council on Climate Change and other related matters. The Adeyemi Federal College of Education Ondo Establishment Bill 2021, which is House Bill number 426, was read the first time in this distinguished chamber on Wednesday, 14th July 2021. This bill seeks to establish the Adeyemi Federal University of Education Ondo for the promotion and development of teacher education in Nigeria. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, these bills were passed by both chambers in the 8th National Assembly. They are straightforward and have again gone through the necessary legislative processes in the House of Representatives. I therefore urge you to support the second reading of these bills as we refer them to the Committee of the Whole for further close-by-close consideration. I so submit, Mr. President.
Any comments? Those in favor that these bills be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the mainstreaming of climate change actions, establish the National Council of Climate Change and other related matters 2021, HB 357, second reading. Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to repeal the Adeyemi College of Education paragraph 1 of the first schedule of the Federal College of Education Act, CAF F8, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Adeyemi Federal University of Education Ondo for the promotion and development of teacher education in Nigeria and for related matters 2021, HB 426, second reading.
A bill for an act to provide for the mainstreaming of climate change actions, establish the National Council of Climate Change, and for other related matters 2021, second reading taken. A bill for an act to repeal the Adeyemi College of Education, paragraph 1 of the first schedule to the Federal College of Education Act, CAP F8, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Adeyemi Federal University of Education, Ondo, for the promotion and development of teachers' education in Nigeria and for related matters 2021 second reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, in accordance with our Standing Order 81, subsection 1, I will move a motion that the bills be referred to the Committee of the Whole for consideration. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion as moved by the leader.
Those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolve into Committee of the Whole to consider the reports, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, this is a very straightforward concurrence. Everything retained, so I'll be fast. Those in favor that clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. We are taking the climate change bill. Those in favor that clauses 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 that the stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 26 on page 16, 27, 28, 29, and 30 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 31, 32, 33, and 34 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the interpretation stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the short title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the schedule stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the explanatory memorandum stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the long title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. The second bill, Ademi Federal University of Education, Ondo. Those in favor that clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 on page 18 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clauses 26, 27, 28, 26 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that clause 27 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the interpretation stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the short title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the schedules 1, 2, and 3 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the explanatory memorandum stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the long title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I rise to move the motion that the chair resumes plenary in order to report progress. I so move.
Chairman, I second that the chair reports to plenary to report progress.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse to plenary for the chair to report progress, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate, in the Committee of the Whole, considered the Climate Change Bill 2021 and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clauses 1 to 34 as recommended, clause 35, interpretation as recommended, short title as recommended, schedule as recommended, explanatory memorandum as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I rise to a motion that these two bills be read the third time.
Minority Leader. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that this bill be now read the third time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the mainstreaming of climate change actions, establish the National Council of Climate Change, and for other related matters, 2021, SB 357, third reading.
A bill for an act to provide for the mainstreaming of climate change actions, establish the National Council of Climate Change, and for other related matters, 2021, third reading taken, and the bill is passed. Leader of the Senate. Clerk. Yeah, Leader of the Senate. You have read both. You have read both. Clerk.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to repeal the Ademi College of Education, paragraph 1 of the first schedule of Federal Colleges of Education Act, CAF F8, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Ademi Federal University of Education Ondo for the promotion and development of teacher education in Nigeria, and for related matters 2021, third reading.
A bill for an act to repeal the Ademi College of Education, paragraph 1 of the first schedule to the Federal College of Education Act, CAP F8, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Ademi Federal University of Education, Ondo, for the promotion and development of teachers' education in Nigeria, and for related matters 2021, third reading taken, and the bill is also passed. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fourth order of the day is the resumption of the adjourned debates on the 2022 Appropriation Bill 2021, second allotted day. The distinguished senators will recall that the Senate commenced debate on the 2022 Appropriation Bill yesterday, Tuesday, 12th October 2021. And so far, 4 senators have contributed. Further debates were deferred until the next legislative day, which is today. Mr. President, with your permission, I move that the Senate do resume the debate on the 2022 Appropriation Bill. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion as moved.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the debate on the 2022 Appropriation Bill continues for the second allotted day, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, I just want to remind us of the guidelines. I have a list of distinguished senators who have signified their interest to speak today, and it's about 30, I have 34, 35 senators, and it will only be fair that each senator keeps to the time of 3 minutes so that we take everyone who shows interest to speak. The time keeper, of course, is the Chief Whip. Chief Whip, you have to be very, very alert so that you don't disrupt, don't interrupt when someone is speaking until 3 minutes. So I will be calling from the list. But let me start with the Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You have 3 minutes. This one I will keep time.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I am Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. I represent Niger North Senatorial District. I'm from Niger State. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me lend my own voice in this very important debate on the 2022 appropriation, which is aptly tagged Budget of Economic Growth and Sustainability. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, as apt as the theme of the budget is, our focus in understanding the fundamental principle at this stage is to say that we must look at those growth indicators, and in doing so also ensure that those projects or programs that have already started are allowed to continue on a trajectory that will tell us exactly where we are going to, which is the element of growth. Mr. President, along this line, I would like to indicate that the infrastructure program of government as currently being captured in the 2021 budget, and which we hope the 2022 budget will consolidate, focusing on road infrastructure, which in the last couple of months we have discussed a number of it. The truth of the matter is logistics, movements of goods and services along the corridors of our transportation nodes are very key to economic sustainability. And if we must reverse the economic trend we are having now, where we are having low productivity and growth, then we must consolidate on the road or transportation network, viz. The roads and the issue of the railway. Talking about railway, I would like to lend my voice to what distinguished Senator Ali said yesterday, that if you look at the railway network, the actual northwestern corridor has not been properly captured. And if you look at the northwestern corridor, you are talking about Sokoto, Kebbi, down to the northern part of Niger State. That area has not been properly captured, and there is need for us to take a look at that particular aspect.
You have to round up now.
On the human capital development, because if you want to get anything sustainable, then whatever you put as the infrastructure, you must have the human capital that will be able to manage the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Whip. Distinguished colleagues, Senator Okajev, Senator Bima Mohamed Enagi, Senator Alaji Ya'u Sahabi, Senator Kabir Gaya, Senator Oriyo Lowo Aderele Adeyemi, Senator, okay.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. Your Excellency, the resolve of this Ninth Senate to do things differently for the benefit of the entire Nigeria is being manifested in a number of ways. Also, the manner and the result of the recently concluded MTEF review meeting showed that the hope for Nigerian economic future and exit from League of Debtor country, if we can do things differently, is imminent. Mr. President, it is obvious that budget and its implementation is one of the strongest instruments that can be used to overcome complex and either-headed challenges and problems confronting this country. Therefore, we should fast moving towards employing upcoming budget to deliberate and consensus, to make deliberate and consensus effort and steps towards addressing the problems of national interest. First and foremost of this step is the use of upcoming budget to address the issue of job creation. We are all living in a pseudo wet and borrowed economic fortune. Let each of the MDAs that is coming up for budget defense shows that their budget can create both direct and indirect jobs. That is establishment can generate or support in terms of the upcoming budget. Secondly, we should be moving towards a balanced budget that cuts down on both domestic and external debt. I'm not opposed to borrowing to execute very critical budget activities, but a situation whereby we are borrowing and we cannot draw down over 70% of the borrowed money is nothing to write home about.
Distinguished, you have to round up now.
Take audit of the previous borrowings and to make sure that the upcoming ones are being supported with evidence of capacity to draw down. A situation whereby we approve debt or borrowing for 2 years and less than 12% of the borrowing is drawn down is nothing to write home about. The whole country will be crying that we are borrowing. Yet, the bulk of this money is not drawn down, and the country is going to pay what we call
you have to conclude now. Thank you very much. Senator Ayo Akin-Elure.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name remains Senator Ayo Akin-Elure, representing Ondo Central. Mr. President, let me first of all commend the President of the nation for putting forward this budget proposal. Mr. President, I strongly believe that we have capacity to generate more revenue than what is captured. I also want to commend the Committee on Finance for a job well done, but to urge that particular committee to strengthen their effort on oversight function to ensure that more GOC are captured. Mr. President, we discovered that much of the money goes to private pockets. Most of the agencies of government that were fully funded, they will come to National Assembly, they will get budget for capital, overhead, and all the rest. Yet the revenue generated by them are not limited to a consolidated fund of the Federation. Mr. President, this budget only captures 63 of such enterprise. But from our record, from what we witnessed during our engagement with them on Committee on Finance, we believe that we can still capture even more than additional 100 GOCs that are fully funded by the federal government, and they are getting revenue that goes to private pocket. Mr. President, I want to also urge the relevant committee of the Senate to go for their oversight functions, because most of the constituency budget being given to senators and House of Rep members of this country are the only thing we feel in the constituencies. Yet, when contractors complete the job, they will not give them their money. They will not fund capital projects. It appears, therefore, that the old essence of budgeting is just to finance overhead. this particular Senate should make a difference to ensure that the good intention of Mr. President is put to bear for this budget to be realized. Mr. President, with these few remarks, I strongly support the passage of this bill for second reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Said Al-Ali, Senator Ibrahim Gobir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. I rise to put my own contribution to the Senate so that at least people will understand exactly what I mean. The real issue here is that most of the assumptions that have been made here are actually good, some of them accurate, but some of them maybe just mere estimation. Some of the ideas that I would like to talk about have been discussed, the issue of infrastructure in particular, that is roads, network, and also the railway. I remember during the last budget, we agreed that there should be railway line from Kano to Katsina to maybe Kauranamo to Sabon Bini, from there to Sokoto to Kebbi. So I think we should do that because that will go a long way in helping our people. And then also, and in Niger also. So I believe this is very good. Then the other one is actually the issue of poverty reduction, in which about 510 billion has been earmarked. And it's my candid opinion that what we can do here is to provide permanent and pensionable employment, by employing Nigerians. And by the time we do that with 510 billion, that will actually employ 1,148 applicants in every state of the country. So I suppose that we should look at that issue because for sure it is not working because the money is not reaching the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Sumata Demi. Distinguished Senator Ibrahim Abdullah Dambaba. No, allow him to. You have 2 minutes. There is a penalty, 1 minute. You have taken 1 minute to get to your seat. So go ahead, 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, I rise to speak on this budget and to commend Mr. President to say that this year's budget is one budget that we'll remember for some of the achievements recorded by this administration in the area of infrastructure and palliatives towards improving the well-being of our people emanating from the global recession of the economy. There is no doubt that some remarkable achievements were made in improving our railway lines, roads, and aviation. Mr. President, for the 2022 budget, I want to equally add my voice to some of the remarks made by my colleagues about foreign loans. To me, Mr. President, the foreign loans in next year's budget, along with some of the palliatives that have been involved, are good. But the foreign loans, Mr. President, if they be geared towards wealth creation, employment opportunities, increased productivity, and better infrastructure facilities, I think it's going to be a welcome development. In essence, Mr. President, the foreign loans should be geared towards providing infrastructure facilities, job creation, and security. Mr. President, because time will not permit me to mention quite a number of the issues I have in mind, permit me to say, Mr. President, that one of the areas that I look forward to this government putting a lot of money in is in the completion of Iron and Steel Complex, which is capable of providing, according to a report of 1979, 68,000 engineers and technicians alone. I think the technological development of Nigeria as a nation the social development and economic development of our country.
Chief Whip, please keep the time.
I hope they'll be completed with the ongoing year's budget. Talking about Kabatu Loring Road, Kabatu Yamoyomo Road, Ayotoro, Abuki, Egon Road. These are roads that are very fundamental, very key to socio-economic development of my state. For the Iron and Steel Complex, Mr. President, and solid minerals, I think under your leadership, Mr. President, as the budget is before us, we should help the executive to draw their attention to critical areas of economic development. One of it, Mr. President, is that both our monetary and physical policies must be interwoven and interlocking together in order to improve the well-being of the people and generate wealth for our nation. This budget, Mr.
Please round up. Yeah. Please round up, please. Please round up, please.
So, Mr. President, I will round up. Mr. President, budgets must be aimed towards job creation, wealth creation. Mr. President, if you look at this year's budget, this 2022 budget, solid minerals, Mr. President, is receiving less than 5 billion naira. Mr. President, we must develop solid minerals. From Gobe to Osun to Kogi to Niger State to Nasarawa, our solid minerals are left undeveloped yet. Now that we are facing global economic recession, I think we should invest more in the solid minerals. Iron and steel is critical. It's important, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Deputy Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Senator Ibrahim Abdullahi Ambaba, and I represent Sokoto South Senatorial District. Mr. President, I want to join my colleagues in adding my voice to the contribution that is being made on the 2022 budget debate. Mr. President, sir, my concern revolves around three areas. One is lack of equity in the allocation or distribution of resources amongst political zones. This issue has been raised by Senator Aleru and Gobir as it relates to the extension and construction of red line to some parts of Northwest geopolitical zone. Two, there is also a problem that has to do with budget discipline. Rollover of budgets for critical infrastructures has not been the norm. Instead, what is normally done year in, year out is introduction of new infrastructural projects, critical infrastructural projects like roads, rails. What needs to be done, Mr. President, emphasis should be more on rollover and completion of roads that have already started. So that is what needs to be done. Secondly, there is also the problem of oversight. Most of our committees, honestly, are not being very, very effective in their role of oversighting MDAs. For instance, there is need for the Appropriation Committee to be rendering quarterly report to this chamber so that this chamber will be able to appreciate the performance of annual budgets. When you look at the other parameters that has to do with the budget, a budget of 16.39 trillion, and with a capital allocation of 5.35 trillion, there is then a deficit of 6.26 trillion, constituting 38.19%. Now, Sir, the capital component of the budget constitutes only 32%. If the deficit is 38.19% of the budget, it means part of the money that is going to be borrowed is going to be devoted to the current expenditure, which is not going to be helpful. Borrowing in itself is not...
Distinguished, you have to round up, please. Yeah, round up. You have 30 seconds.
The need for increased public-private partnership involvement in the improvement of infrastructural facilities in the country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished. Senator Danjumala, Senator Albert Basi Akpan, Senator Sakibo George. Albert. Okay. Senator Sakibo, Senator Joy Thompson Sakibo, CON JP.
3 minutes. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator George Thompson Sakibo. Thank you for the privilege to make a few comments on the budget. Mr. President, I just have 2 areas to make mention of. The first one is, if you look at the budget from 2015 to 2022 now, the problem we have, for me, is the exchange rate. The budget of 2016 of 6.08 trillion, which was equivalent to $30 billion at exchange rate of 197, and then you go down to maybe 2019 at an exchange rate of 306. Mr. President, if you interpolate this one on this budget with 2016 budget at 197, this budget will have been $83 billion. If you interpolate it with 306 as of 2019 budget, it will have been 53.56 billion. And that will be equivalent to 12 trillion only. 12 trillion only for this year. If it is in 2016, it will have been 7.87 trillion. So I think we have a problem. Our problem is perhaps relate with the central bank to come up with very strong monetary policies so we can maintain our exchange rate at least for a while, maybe 2 years or maybe 3 years. If that is not done, as long as the exchange rate naira is diving down, the quantum of trillions in our budget will be increasing, and then deficit will also be increasing, and borrowing will also be increasing because they are all completely related. That is one. Number 2, Mr. President, is the contention of infrastructure provision with deficit and borrowing. If you look at the budget from 2014 to 2022, you will observe a trend: deficit, borrowing, and in often times, the deficit is about equal to the capital budget provision. So it means if we don't borrow, we won't be able to implement capital projects. And so even in this year's budget, you will see that if you don't borrow, virtually all the capital projects cannot be implemented. And if the foreign partners we are expecting to give us money do not give us money, then we cannot implement capital projects. And capital project is the main essence of governance. Mr. President, having said this one, I want to suggest that government can go into public-private partnership with organizations as it is done in other advanced countries and bring infrastructure that can pay off itself in a number of years. Two, we can also, it was done before, oil for infrastructure, that can work. Finally, a question. Mr. President, we are borrowing all this amount of money. Why is River State not considered in the provision of infrastructure with this borrowing?
You may round up, please.
Because at the time of payment, River State, being one of the major oil-producing states, will be part of the paying medium, and then we are not benefiting from these borrowed funds. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
No, I'm not Speaker, but you are welcome back. I know you are a member of the House of Reps, so you are still, I share your sentiments. Senator Christopher Ekpeyong, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Senate, and my distinguished colleagues. I remain Senator Christopher Stephen Ekpenyang, representing the good people of Akwa Ibom Northwest in Akwa Ibom State. Mr. President, thank you for giving me this opportunity to also air my view about this 2022 budget. I've listened to most of my colleagues since yesterday and today. Mr. President, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria means well for our nation. But I think when you look at this budget of 2022, you still see that the recurring expenditure is greater than the capital expenditure. And I want to urge my colleagues in this place, because this budget will be sent to various committees. We have to take a look, have a very serious look at the recurring expenditures of each MDAs. Why is it that every year we have a ritual of buying computers, buying desks, buying biros? These are all consumables that do not produce the necessary needed way without for our people. And Mr. President, we are talking about how to grow our economy. How can we grow economy? Mr. President, remember in this very hallowed chamber, I raised a motion that was aptly accepted by this hallowed chamber about the moribund industries. How can we depend on a monolithic economy, just one side of economy, from oil without going to production? We should look at this budget that has been made for us by Mr. President. We should look at it thoroughly to ensure that we diverse our economy. We should diversify our economy, go into agriculture holistically, and not just on a lip say or using television to say we are growing our economy, we are growing agriculture. So we should look at our budget. Seriously, this budget should be rejigged by this Senate to ensure that it reflects the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Geshambasi. Distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, we're all happy that the budget came in early this year. But Mr. President, I will appeal to you that the 3 minutes you're giving to us to speak is a bit too short. Ordinarily, I won't want to say anything, because I don't really know what I can say in 3 minutes, because there's so much to be said. But having said that, I'll just talk briefly about what Senator George Thompson Tekebo said about borrowings and states that are benefiting from those borrowings. When the government sent the list of states that will benefit from the monies that were to be borrowed, my state was excluded from that list. And yet, the payment is going to be part of government revenue. Having said that, Mr. President, I'd like to debunk an argument that Nigeria is underborrowed. Nigeria is not underborrowed. Nigeria is the highest, 75%, 73% as at August of all our income is going into debt service. And Nigeria is 73, our 73 debt to revenue ratio, 73% debt to revenue ratio is the highest among African countries of our level, which is extremely high. We are the highest country in Africa in terms of debt service and revenue ratio. And we really need to watch that. And again, we are going into another budget with a very high deficit financing. It is good that the government has decided to bring the government-owned enterprises, GOEs, into the budget. But the challenge we are going to have with that is that because the power sector has continued to be a burden in our development, I don't see much we can achieve with that. And so, as we are borrowing these monies, which are meant to be used for capital development, for capital for capital expenditure, it is important that we actually make proper allocations to the power sector and give ourselves a target at the end of this year to know what the outcomes will be in terms of the power sector. Power sector just has to be focused on. Again, the president in his speech talked about bringing in the private sector into getting the private sector properly engaged in the process of budgeting. And we cannot do that without the power sector, because the power sector is really a big drain on all businesses in the country. Having said that, Mr. President, I would like to briefly talk about the issue I raised when we did the MTEF. The issue, we haven't seen the budget. We don't know whether there is a budget for under-recovery for the 6 months that is supposed to last, or whether there's a budget for the provision of frontier exploration. Having said that,
Chief Whip.
power sector is in comatose. We need to do something urgently to it.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Shaib Isalo, Senator Stephanus Gyang, Senator Uche Ekwenefe, Senator Amesan Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Mohammed Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. I wish to commend the President for presenting this wonderful budget, especially at this moment that we are coming out of the COVID situation, the COVID pandemic. I think the budget outlook, as someone with an economic background, I think is a very good. The debt level of this country is still within a sustainable limit. And borrowing are meant to service investments. So I think we are in the right direction. When we borrow this money, we are going to invest it in strategic projects. And these projects, the multiplier effect of these projects is not only going to serve the politicians, but the entire country. If we have a very good railway network, it is the common man that will take the rail as a transportation means to where he's going to. And some of these major projects are spread all over the regions of Nigeria. We have the Niger Bridge in the southeast. We have the Ibadan-Lagos Expressway and the railway, the coastal railways coming up. The Lagos to Kano railway, I think is well commendable. But one area that I've seen that we need to work on in order to also have this budget and not just rely on loans is the area of revenue generation. It is a major challenge, but the tax administrators need to work hard in order to devise means and ways that we can generate more revenue, and the tax administration framework need also to be looked into. And in so doing, they will be able to realize more payments of revenue, and also tax filing should be one thing that they should insist or make sure that it's happening in this country. A lot of people that are supposed to be paying their taxes, they don't. And you expect the government to handle everything, from health, education, transportation, and everything. So we need to also do our own part by paying our taxes. And then the areas of compliance that the FIRS need to look into, especially those that high net individuals. Property tax also need to be looked into, because most of the money today, if you look at Abuja, you see properties dropping everywhere. And we need to do something. On roads, I will appeal to these distinguished colleagues to look at the situation of roads from Jaba, Mokwa, Makera, Tagina, Birnin Gwari to Kaduna. That used to be a corridor that boosts the economy of this country. So when we come, I will appeal to the Works Committee to look at that road very seriously. And also the completion of Suleja to
A memorandum, please.
allow agricultural produce to reach the market. So I appeal to this Senate to look at those things. But in general, this is a fantastic budget that will carry Nigeria to the next level. Thank you.
Senator Michael Opemi Bamidele.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I'm Michael Opemi Bamidele. I represent Ekiti Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, my own very short contribution actually will be to make an appeal to our colleagues in the National Assembly. It goes beyond ensuring, as we have done in the last 2 years, that the budget is timelessly passed. But beyond this is to ensure that no stone is left unturned in making sure that the budget is implemented to its letter. 2022 is going to be a crucial year. It's a year when members of the political class definitely will be busy preparing for elections and holding primaries. And it's important that we are all conscious of the fact that those who will implement this budget would want to assume, as it had happened in the past, that members of the National Assembly who are supposed to be in charge of oversight will be too busy, or at some point will be so lame duck as to be able to do a thorough supervision. So as we are getting ready to pass the budget, it's important that we all, again, remain conscious of the fact that we need to devote enough time to ensuring that there is proper and adequate oversight on the 2020 appropriation law implementation more than in the previous years. Again, Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to make this.
Thank you. Senator Michael Nachi.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. I'm Michael Nachi from Abuja South. Mr. President, I've gone through the budget. For me, it is well articulated, but there are worries in some areas. Like my colleague Sani Musa was talking. For me, I can propose that all new road constructions should be stopped while federal road maintenance agencies should continue maintaining the existing roads, while the budgets of the new roads should be packed into railways. Because no matter how we do on roads, when we don't have railways, carrying all these haulages, all the roads spoils within 6 months. But when the railway lines take all our goods, the roads will be light and they will last long. I thank Mr. President for bringing in PPP. That's public-private partnership method of construction and agreement in Nigeria. This has served other countries. Now that he has brought it in, by the time we repair all our railways, the PPP will function. We cannot give out our roads for private sector when the roads are bad. We cannot sell our industries when the industries are bad. Yeah, I agree that when you buy an asset, you buy both the asset and liability. But you have to buy a liability that is not dead. So we need to look at it. My second worry is, I don't know whether it is real or right, but I saw it in television. Vice President saying we devalue our naira further. If we devalue our naira further, we pass 410 naira per dollar in MTF as exchange rate. If we devalue it further, even the statutory transfer is useless. The salaries of our workers are now useless. So we need to tell CBN not to listen to devaluing this naira as of today, so that all the things we pass, just 2 days, President presented his budget, we are talking of devaluing the naira. Please, Mr. President, I think this thing will affect us so much. Another area is the target given to FIRS, 16 trillion. With the situation of things, and we are talking of devaluation, FRS cannot achieve that feat. Mr. President, I therefore submit that we have to look and work like professionals here. And next time they are preparing budget, may they please call what they call Conference of Construction Professionals to give them the actual cost of every road they want to put in budget. Otherwise, we are only doing proposals every year without achieving these roads and construction other items. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Ike Ikwaramadu. Senator Ibrahim Shekarong. Senator Ibrahim Yahya Olurogbe.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Ibrahim Yahya Olurogbe. I represent Kwara Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, given the time, I'll make my contribution and intervention short. The first one, Mr. President, will be to commend the President for increasing funding in the health sector, particularly given the pandemic that we have. And this is reflecting in some of the infrastructure and services we are able to deliver. Just of recent, my committee, the Committee on Health, with my colleagues, we have been able to visit some hospitals across the country. And we have seen the investment that the sector obtained in 2020 and 2021 budget. This has improved our capacity to combat COVID-19, as well as our ability to be able to offer some services. However, as I said, it is not enough because Nigeria still needs more. We still need to be able to increase investment in that sector to reduce and eliminate Nigeria going abroad for tourism. Mr. President, on the budget generally, just like several speakers have said, from my opinion, Nigeria has a revenue challenge, and we need an arm of government to see how we work with the executive to address this. My short intervention will be that we have to look at some of the revenue policies that we have that is making us not to be able to generate enough. If you look at the budget across the last 3 years, we have not been able, the maximum we were able to do was in 2020 when we had 73% of our target revenue coming in. However, our servicing continues to increase. So I want us to look at the number of Nigerians in the tax net, particularly the high-worth people. We can't tax the majority of Nigerians are poor, but many of Nigerians that are rich, that have assets, that have money, they are not paying enough tax. And they are not even at all being captured appropriately. We need to tax our revenue agencies to do this better. We need to review waivers and tax holidays that we give to some of the companies. Yes, we did that in the COVID, but we have to look at it because we are not getting enough into the cover. Also, the DOEs and even several other government agencies that generate revenue, the National Assembly will have to perform our oversight effectively to be able to see that revenue generated for government is appropriately remitted and is appropriately calculated. Several agencies manipulate expenditure to be able to reduce what they put there. Finally, Mr. President, it is good for us to take a loan to build infrastructure. But I will round up. We have to think about management of these infrastructures. Otherwise, by the time payments are being done by generations coming, the infrastructure will depreciate. So we need to think of a public-private sector in terms of building infrastructures and managing them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Matthew Urogide.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Matthew Urogide. I represent the Dosa Senatorial District. Mr. President, first let me commend your very good efforts. I want to talk about the opaque operation of service-wide votes. Mr. President, for some time now, one has observed that the disbursement from service-wide votes really have not been too open to the standing committees of the Senate, that has been very open to the Appropriation Committee of the Senate. Mr. President, we might just be reminded what service-wide vote makes, which is a budget that is put in a basket to meet the shortfalls, unanticipated shortfalls in recurrent and capital expenditures. Mr. President, in 2021, the service-wide votes, what was there was 758 billion. And in 2022, from MTEF and FSP adjustment that we made, the presentation was that extra 510 billion were going to be added to what is being earmarked for 2022. Mr. President, this is a huge sum of money. We know it too that all NDAs and other participants of government go for certain approvals for them to be able to meet with this expenditure. But after they are expended, that is where it stops. When these agencies come for budget appraisal or budget performance before their standing committee, they don't disclose whatever is released to them for service-wide vote. This has been the practice. And I think it is very wrong to have such huge sums of money earmarked for service-wide vote, and at the end of the day, all the use of such money that are shrouded in secrecy, I think is unacceptable to any parliament in the world. Therefore, I am asking that, Mr. President, that any disbursement that is made henceforth from service-wide vote, because on the expenditure side, it must be disclosed to the standing committees and appropriation so that they can compartmentalize this spending or this expenditure accordingly. If you go to page 5, item number 22 of the President's speech, budget speech, he said that as of July 2021, 6.79 trillion had been used, that is on the expenditure side, out of which 4.17 was on the deficit, and this deficit was financed through domestic borrowing, which means some of this money that we are spending on service-wide votes, if it's on the current side, to meet shortfalls in recurrent supplementation, it is important that those expenditures must be properly captured. Because we have said that all our borrowings that we are doing is supposed to be used to meet capital shortfall in capital expenditure for rebuilding of our own infrastructure. Therefore, I think it is important all disbursement from service-wide votes must be declared so that we know exactly what we are borrowing is properly being used, for the purpose, which is meeting with shortfalls in capital expenditure. Finally, Mr. President, I want to mention my state, Edo State, and in particular, my central district. There is one road that has been an albatross for years, the Benin-Abraka Road. Mr. President, I am calling on the executive and all the agencies that are so concerned, please look at Benin-Abraka Road. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Francis Adenibu Afadamsi.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Francis Adenibu Afadamsi from Osun East. I'd like to contribute my own discussion on this 2022 budget proposal. I've listened to all my colleagues, and I've come to the conclusion that without any repetition, the Nigerian government must stop borrowing. We should cut our quotes according to our resources. There's no rush in doing all the projects at the same time. Whatever specific project we are going to do, we should have the money down and finish it on time. Imagine all the roads I've been doing, particularly Ibadan Express Road, since the time of Obasanjo, we have not been able to finish it, and we continue to allocate money every year. This time around, whatever leftover projects we are going to do is what the government should be able to conclude before the exit of this administration. We have already borrowed a lot of money, and the National Assembly has cooperated a lot with the government. But the implementers, particularly the executive, the lack of economic team, effective economic team, has killed the whole initiative of Mr. President. Again, in Agric, a lot of smugglings are going on, which thereby killing agricultural initiative of the same government. My own take is very simple. Let the government overhaul the revenue agencies. Within a month or two, you see all the targets that we'll be able to gather a lot of funds to prosecute our project. With this and all others, I submit that this includes mineral resources, solid minerals. We have not gone anywhere. The steel industry we have been prosecuting since Sagari's time has not gone anywhere. Therefore, the government must face specific projects that they can finish before the expiration of his time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Adetokunbo.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. My contribution to the 2022 budget will also center around the revenue challenge. And this is important because for an economy like ours that is just getting out of recession, your capacity to continue to, stay above waters will just be backed by your ability to continue to generate revenue. So looking at the 2022 budget, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, first I must commend the revenue posture of the 2022 budget for three main reasons. Number one, I think that the encouragement in terms of the increase or the enhancement from the projected amount in 2021 is encouraging. I mean, you have a budget of 10 trillion, which is almost 25% of projected budget for last year. Equally important is the fact that in this particular budget projection, the reliance on oil is also reduced. You have about 35% component deriving from oil revenue, while the balance of 65 is from non-oil. And also commendable is also the fact that this particular budget too is also bringing about fiscal transparency and accountability, in the sense that you have almost about 63 government-owned enterprises whose budget have also been integrated in this current budget. But having said that, Mr. President, I think it's also important to also try to express some of the concerns that I think we need to be very careful about. Number one is the actual performance of our budget year on year. If we look at the trend, it hasn't been that encouraging. In 2019, we had about 65%, while in 2020, 73%. This year, if you look at it from the May performance, we are almost at about 56%. Now, why this is important is because of what my other colleagues have also been talking about, which has to do with the debt service. As the actual performance drops, the ability to service debt will also be a major issue. And for emphasis, it is important to let us know that in 2020, the debt service ratio, debt service to revenue was about 85%, while the current year is about 90%. I think that we need to address our revenue challenge. And part of the suggestions that I would like to bring will be that...
You may round up now, please.
That most of the investment in the infrastructural development and the capacity in human development that we are building, we must also try and entrench our tax revenue capacity to also bring in more revenues to government. Also, the GOEs, that is the government.
You have to round up now. Yes.
in fact, the tax credit and the tax concessions, just like my former colleagues had mentioned, I think we need to look to review them for efficiency and value. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Francis Elimikena. Distinguished Senator Rocha Sokorocha.
Mr. President, I speak for 2 minutes. Mr. President, year in and year out, the Senate has been in the business of making budgets to better the life of our people. And since the inception of this National Assembly, year in and year out, our challenges have been increasing in a geometrical progression, which then means that our system of budgetary has not actually been able to address our increasing challenges. Mr. President, it means that if we keep doing the same old budgets, the same old ways, we shall keep getting the same old results. Since the aim of our budget is to better the life of our people, may I advise that this year, let's have a change a bit by making what I call a business budget. Because government is business and business is governance. And where that happens, it then means we shall be concentrating more on things that can create wealth and engage our restive youths and address the issue of hunger in our nation. Mr. President, I'll give you a good example. If the money borrowed, or if the money we're borrowing this time, some percentage of it is taken to Abuja, Imo State, and to build the world-class industrial park, I assure you that the manufacturing sector of our economy will improve, and in the couple of years to come, we'll have made more profit and we'll have created jobs for our people. This is the way to run a nation where they have challenges of increasing poverty, increasing insecurity, is to engage the youth, and by so doing, we must create wealth. Thank you. So submit, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Ashiru Oyelola. Jarigbe Agoma Jarigbe.
Mr. President, I'm Senator Ashiru, representing Kwara South. Mr. President, my major concern on this budget is on the capital side of it. And when you look at capital figure of 5.35 trillion, it looks big. But the fact of it is that most expenditure on capital projects are dollarized. And by the time you do a conversion into dollars, we'll be talking of a meager $10 billion. Compare with what is obtainable, you will discover that $10 billion over a 200 million population, nothing to write home about. And mostly, this capital expenditure is being financed through borrowing. Borrowing on its own, there's nothing bad in it. But I still feel that we must look for alternative options of financing our budget. In particular, I discovered that there are a lot of dead assets in Nigeria, a lot of assets that have been built over time by federal government, and they are lying value now without putting them into use. In particular, I will want to refer to building assets, dotting everywhere, especially in city of Lagos. We have Independence Building, we have former National Assembly Complex, NICOM Building, NITE, old defense, and a lot of buildings. I feel that the federal government should dispose these buildings to be able to make money to finance our capital expenditure. On the totality, I praise the federal government for bringing forth a commendable budget. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator Jarigbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I am Jarigbe Gomjarigbe. I represent the good people of Cross River North. I represent the good people of Cross River North, Cross River State. In contributing to this all-important debate, I'd like to commend the budget proposal because it's an upward trajectory of the previous year's budget. But I want to dwell on a particular sector, the health sector. From the figures for us, we have a proposal for 262 billion and some fraction for recurrent expenditure, and 116 billion for capital expenditure for the health sector. I think this is grossly inadequate. Looking at even the Abuja Declaration in April 2001, where African countries met and agreed that 15% of our budgetary provisions should be for the health sector. I think that this is grossly inadequate. A situation where we walk into our health facilities and we don't have basic health equipment. Even people who have issues, basic issues, comorbidities, cannot have basic equipments like sphygmomanometers and other equipments, MRI scans, CT scans. These are things that are indispensable in our health sector. And we know that the doctors cannot physically look at a human being and diagnose what is wrong with the person. On that note, I want to appeal to this Senate that we should look at the health sector and provide more funds for the health sector to add more value to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Hezekiah Dimka.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Hezekiah Dimka representing the people of Plateau Central. Mr. President, I want to thank you sincerely for giving me this opportunity to say a word or two. Mr. President, about the budget, I want to thank Mr. President for presenting this very great budget. The country, as a nation, Nigeria,
This is where we'll round off today's live broadcast of Senate Plenary. Well, the Senate has been debating on the general principles of the 2022 Appropriation Bill, which started yesterday, being Tuesday. Well, some of the senators have made some recommendations. Some of them call for the expansion of rail lines, creation of more employment opportunities with the proposed loans. And some of them have also canvassed improved legislative oversight on budgets by the National Assembly. Well, the climate change bill, which was sponsored by Representative Samuel Honourable in the House of Representatives, has received concurrence in the Senate, while Senate has confirmed the nomination of Amechi Nwoha as Commissioner representing the Southeast in the National Assembly Service Commission. At this point in time, we will now hand you over to our studios to continue with our scheduled programs for the day. I am Ignatius Nkwo, and on behalf of the Outside Broadcast crew, enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye for now.
It's time for another interesting package of
Everything Music.